Peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? So for the past couple of days, I've been going back and forth on Exodus chapter 27, reading, taking some notes, reading some more, going back and forth, trying to figure out what's going on, what's the significance, and got hung up a little bit, didn't really understand much. So this is going to be pretty much a reading of Exodus chapter 27. This is, again, as I always tell you, an extension of my Bible study. So sometimes I get to points where I'm like going back and forth, trying to understand the significance. I get hung up and I just decide to move on. That's why sometimes you might see, so different things happen with my videos. Sometimes I get busy, I have an actual job. I would love to do nothing but podcasts for a living, but not all of us are afforded that opportunity. So I have a regular job. I get busy. I travel with my job. Things happen. Life happens. And sometimes it's also the fact that I'm reading and studying and I am hung up on a certain place. I don't know where to go with it. I don't know what everything means. I don't understand the significance. And at those points, I come to a breaking point where I'm like, all right, I'm going to move on. I'm not going to spend too much more time here. I don't really get it. Maybe later on something will be said and I will understand more in depth what's going on. And that happened here in Exodus 27. It's dealing with the construction of the altar. And I was trying to understand and break down all of this really for my own purposes. Again, I don't do these podcasts for entertainment effect. I know many people podcast for that reason. I do enjoy it. I try to make my content quality. I try to make sure visually it's good. I try to make sure audibly it's good. And I try to make sure that my thoughts are concise. But when it comes to my Bible podcast, really it's kind of therapeutic. I've said that before. This is more helpful to me sometimes than I think to most people out there. So, like I said, there's not much understanding I have as far as the altars. Some of you might understand this more in depth than me. That's fine with me. When it comes to studying my Bible, I have abandoned pride. I realize there's just things I don't know. And maybe at some point I will learn and know these things, but right now I do not know, and I do not try to act like I know. So anyway, book of Exodus chapter 27, let's get into this. And thou shalt make an altar of shittim wood. Again, why shittim wood exactly is used. It was a very good looking wood from everything I've seen, and I'm assuming that is the reason, because, purely of the opulent look. I think that's the right word I was looking for. 5 cubits long and 5 cubits broad. The altar shall be 4 square, and the height thereof shall be 3 cubits. Now I was going to go through all the measurements. I've done that in other chapters. Cubit is 20.61 inches. So if you want to do the calculations to figure out what all these measurements are, you can do that. Verse 2, and thou shalt make the horns of it upon the 4 corners thereof, and his horns shall be of the same, and thou shalt overlay it with brass. Now, initially when I saw horns, I couldn't, you try to make sense of things. Like I don't think any of this construction is haphazard. All of this is for a reason. And I was just like, okay, why horns? Like, what am I missing? Horns. Horns are on animals. What? Well, we know horns protrude. The horns are going to be on the four corners and are going to be covered with brass. My estimation, along with other things, because you see other uses of these horns, I believe in the book of Leviticus, when they poured the blood of the sacrifice on the horns. I believe that happened. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe along with that, these horns were also used to move the altar. If you get four people on all sides with these, protruding horns, this altar could be lifted and moved. Just an assumption. I'm not saying that I'm right about that. Like I said, I was going through this, trying to figure out as much as I could, and I realized at some point, I don't know what's going on, so I'm just gonna read through the chapter and move on. And I didn't want to just move on to the next chapter and abandon this chapter in the video. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna, as I said before, extend my podcast from my Bible study and do exactly what I was doing in my Bible study, and pretty much just reading, doing a little bit of observation. And thou shalt make his pans receive his ashes, and his shovels, and his basins, and his flesh hooks, and his fire pans, all the vessels thereof shalt make of brass. Thou shalt make of brass. I did wonder, and I don't really know why brass specifically was used. I don't know if it was the color of the brass, maybe the flash point of the brass, the point at which it melts. And I believe gold has a hotter flash point. So brass will melt before gold, if I'm not mistaken. Because I was looking this up, trying to figure out, thinking of different reasons brass would be used. The sacrifice was burned at the altar, so maybe it was for the flash point. Not really sure. A fire from burning a sacrifice would get that hot anyway to melt brass. But maybe it was to cover some of the other, pieces, things that would burn. I don't know. I don't know exactly why brass was used. I don't think it's insignificant. And I think at some point, Lord willing, I will figure this out. But as of right now, I don't know. And thou shalt make for it a great network of brass. Upon the net shalt thou make 4 brassen rings in 4 corners thereof, and thou shalt put it under the compass of the altar beneath, that the net may be even to the midst of the altar. And thou shalt make staves for the altar, staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with the brass. And what is a stave? This is something that I meant to look up and put in my notes, because I did look up some things and put it in my notes, but I did not look up stave, and I meant to. So we're going to look that up right now. So a stave is a thin, narrow piece of timber of which casks are made. Staves make a considerable articles of export from New England to the West Indies. A staff, a metrical portion, a part of a psalm appointed to be sung in churches. In music, the 5 horizontal and parallel lines in which the notes. Okay, so clearly, that's not what we're talking about. So it's got to be that first part of the definition, a thin, narrow piece of timber. So that's what they're making. And the staves shall be put into the rings, and the staves shall be upon the 2 sides of the altar to bear it. Hollow with boards shalt thou make it, as it was showed thee in the mount, so shall they make it. And thou shalt make the court of the tabernacle for the south side, of the tabernacle. For the south side, southward, shall be hangings for the court of fine twine linen of 100 cubits long for one side. Now, I said this in another video. I will stop and say this. I have looked up uh different places where like computer generated models of what is described here was made, and that's a good practice because it kind of visually gives you an idea of what's going on here. Sometimes when you read all of this stuff, sometimes things can be lost in translation, right? No matter which Bible version you use, whether it's the Amplified version, English Standard Version, a lot of these readings are very similar. So you're reading this, you're getting all of these details, but there's so much detail that you actually lose the ability to actually construct this because there's so much intricate detail. So if you go to, there's different websites. Like I said, you can go on YouTube and look up videos of computer generated models of the tabernacle, the altar, and all of this. Good practice. And the 20 pillars thereof, and their 20 sockets shall be of brass. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets shall be of silver. And likewise, for the north side in length, there shall be hangings of 100 cubits long, and his 20 pillars and their 20 sockets of brass, the hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. And for the breadth of the court on the west side shall hangings of 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10. And the breadth of the court on the east side eastward shall be 50 cubits. The hangings of the one side of the gates shall be 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And on the other side shall be hangings 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And for the gate of the court shall be an hanging of 20 cubits, of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twine linen, wrought with needlework. And their pillars shall be 4 and 3 sockets, 4. And all the pillars round about the court shall be filleted with silver. Their hooks shall be of silver, and their sockets of brass. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, and the breadth 50 everywhere, and the height 5 cubits of fine twine linen, and their sockets of brass. All the vessels of the tabernacle, and all the service thereof, and all the pins thereof, and all the pins of the court shall be brass, shall be of brass. Again, I'm positive the fact that they're brass is significant. Maybe not just in some spiritual aspect, but maybe actually practically. I just don't know what that is just yet. And thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring thee pure oil, olive, beaten for the light, to cause the lamp to burn always in the tabernacle of the congregation without the veil, which is before the testimony. Aaron and his sons shall order it from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute, forever unto their generation on the behalf of the children of Israel. Again, many of this, or much of this rather, has a lot of significance, a lot of symbolism, and a lot of representations. I don't necessarily have all of that nailed down. I have some ideas. And one of the reasons in my own study, I have no problem moving on when I don't understand. If you get yourself in a habit of feeling as though you don't understand something, so you have to inject something, like I don't understand, I don't know what this is, so I have to place something in here. I have to ascribe some meaning. That's how you get into a bad habit of assuming you know something and holding to beliefs that may be disproven later on, but yet you still hold to them. I found in my Bible study, this is what I found. When you make an honest attempt to just understand the Bible, you're not gonna understand every single thing you read across. And I think this is the mistake some people made. Now let me, you know me, I like to add caveats. So let me add this caveat. I'm not saying you can't understand the Bible, and I'm not. Maybe sometimes things aren't as deep as we try to make it, and that's why we don't understand. And when I was reading this, I thought that to myself. Maybe I'm trying to make this so deep, and it's actually just simple. It's just construction, and there's not much more to it. I do think there is more, and I just don't understand. But I said all that to say there's nothing wrong with not knowing. There is much what's the word I'm looking for? Nobility and humility in just admitting I don't know. You know how many times somebody is asking me about a verse or a subject in the Bible? When I don't know, this is how I'll lead. This is just me personally. I'm not telling you how to answer. I'm just giving you, a personal instant. I have no problem saying I got some thoughts on that, but I don't really know. These are my thoughts, but I don't really have anything concrete, right? So I don't mind offering my thoughts. But if I don't have a concrete, sound, biblical, thorough argument, I make sure it's understood that these are just my thoughts that can be maybe in the future disproven with sound biblical logic that I just don't understand. I think it's a good way to avoid false doctrine, and it's also a good way to avoid cult-like behavior. I think this idea that you can't be wrong, I think this is how cults take over, because people have this impression in their head that it's gotta be my way. I have to be right. No, I don't have to be anything. What I need to do is I need to believe what the Bible says. And when I don't understand, I can have some opinions, but other than that, I just need to keep my mouth shut. Y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.